Hey Nut and Fancy, what's one of your favorite all-time large folding knives? You're looking at it. This is one of them, not the only one. There's several that I love, but this is one of them. Of my all-time favorite folding, let me say large folding tactical knives. And that is the Benchmade Model 710 McHenry Williams. And yes, I am a big fan of this blade. Now, that being said, as I often do in my videos, I want to talk a little bit about philosophy of application. Where does this knife fit in according to me? And again, these are my experiences. You might vary in what category you think this knife fits. But first and foremost, I think this is a large folding tactical knife. And my definition of tactical is defensive, meaning that we would use this if necessary to defend our lives and take life if we had to. Heaven forbid. And I mean that sincerely, heaven forbid. But if it comes down to it, and it's coming down to it every day in the streets of Iraq and Afghanistan, this might be a blade you want strapped to your side. Now, if you've watched some of my other videos, I have talked very seriously about some fixed blade designs which are very affordable that I think would fill the application of fixed blade tactical knife in a very high threat environment. The Cold Steel OSS being one of them. But that Cold Steel OSS is a big knife. And it's not, even though it is light for what it is, it's still a lot heavier than this knife. So in certain scenarios, and I'm going to call them high risk scenarios, a large bladed folding tactical knife is an outstanding choice. Does it have limitations? Sure it does. One of them would be if I have gloves on, especially heavy leather gloves. You can forget deploying this quickly. Heck, even Nomex gloves. You can do it, but you're going to have to practice with it. I would say anytime you're going to employ a large folding knife in a defensive way, I would not recommend wearing gloves. If you do, they better be like search and seizure types that have really thin skin on them, that you have some dexterity with them. Because you really need to be able to manipulate this knife competently to defend yourself. It's a lot harder, and there's a lot more subject to error than there is with a fixed blade knife. So that is indeed a limitation of a folding tactical knife of any design, not just this Benchmade. With that being said though, there are scenarios where I think I would like to have this knife strapped to my side, and actually have had it strapped to my side. And when we're talking about strapping metal to our side, we need to look very carefully at every ounce of steel we're carrying. I am dead serious about this, and I mention it in all my videos, is that loadout weight is a big deal. If you haven't humped gear in super hot environments, i.e. the desert, heck, even for a cop in somewhere where it's hot and humid, wearing a 35-pound, 30-pound equipment belt, then you need to do it. Because you get a appreciation real quick of, hey man, what can I do to lighten my load? So, that being said, I do look very carefully at every ounce I carry. Really, no matter what the situation. Where I'm at now, no matter what I'm doing, if I'm flying, if I'm doing a tactical scenario of some sort, I'm still going to look at my weight very carefully. But that being said, sometimes there's good weight. Now, the Benchmade 710 is 4.8 ounces, and that does exceed my arbitrary 4-ounce limitation I've set for my own tactical folding knives. Why did I set that limitation, you might ask? Well, where does that come from? Well, honestly, it comes from my own experience, in that I found that all my knives, and you guys know I have a lot of knives, I have a lot to choose from. I have a quiver, if you will, but the ones weighing over 4 ounces, I found that I just wasn't carrying them. And I would reach for something lighter. And I still do that, whether consciously or subconsciously. But that being said, sometimes in a very high risk environment, high threat environment, this type of knife, the Benchmade 710, makes a lot of sense. Especially if you've got to hide the blade. Like if you're in overt combat like a trooper, Marine, Army trooper there in Iraq, Afghanistan, and future battles, not so much a factor. Still could be advantageous actually to have a hidden blade and surprise your adversary at the last second. I'm always for that. But as a civilian, as a cop, maybe serving high risk warrants, this would be a good option. Because it's a lot more concealable, a lot more carryable, And frankly, it's a lot lighter than most fixed blades out there. And yet the advantage of the Benchmade 710 is it has such a wicked large blade. Now it's not huge. We're not talking 5 inches, 6 inches. It's about a 4-inch blade, 3.9 inches. But that's a lot longer than most of the folding tactical knives we've talked about. So yes, it's one of my all-time favorite knives. And first off, I'll talk about specifics. As usual, I'll run out of time. The deployment. Like all Benchmades, it's just slick. It's fast, it's sure, it works. Again, like I've said in other videos, I'm not a bit, and I own a lot of automatics. To be honest with you, I do. I have the autos, so I have a lot to compare this knife against. And in my opinion, a well-fashioned, manually deploying knife like the Benchmade 710 is all you'll ever need. Especially since it's conventional in its deployment, i.e. a thumb stud. That's how you're going to deploy probably 99% of your knives that you have. At least I do. Even if it has another option like a blade flipper, I always train to deploy it using the thumb stud. Consistency is how we're going to train, and that's how we're going to deploy when we're under high stress. And that blade just comes out with a nice snick and a nice lockup. Man, it's just an awesome blade. And the lockup is typical Benchmade. Do I really need to talk about Benchmade lockup? There's nothing to say. It's vault-like. It's awesome. Let's talk about that blade shape. And this gets to why I love the 710 so much. To me, it is a very good fighting blade. Awesome fighting blade. It's got good belly, good reach. It's got a faceted tip, unsharpened of course, because it is a folder. But nevertheless, it would give it greater piercing capability in a thrust attack. And it's got that reach. Love it. Love it, love it, love it. Nice vertical striations on the finished blade. It's not stonewashed. If I had to call it anything, my versions are kind of like Scotch-Brite versions. Benchmade logo with the 710 emblem there. McHenry Williams on the other side. Now you might notice my blades, unlike today's offerings, are made out of 154 cm. Today's 710s, I believe they're making them out of D2 steel, which is also an outstanding steel I think highly of. But I'm also a fan of 154 cm. I think it has good corrosion resistance, has good toughness and edge retention, not too hard to sharpen, at least for me. And yes, these blades, like all my blades, I know I'm psycho that way. I have to resharpen them to get them just to where I want them. It's razor sharp. And I always like that in my blade. So to the blade of the 710, when you need that large folding tactical design that almost gets into the territory of fixed blade designs, you can't go wrong with it. It is perfectly designed. Nice belly, nice slicing, nice capability for a thrust attack. Awesome. How about the handle? I'm going to give it a little hit there. These are machine G10 exterior scales on the 710, and they are adequate. I would like to see them much more aggressive texturing on them. Not so good as it is. It's adequate, but it is still a little bit slippery. Look at my SIG-Tac reviews. If you want to see how to do G10, look how SIG-Tac does it. It's very aggressive. The jimping here is more cosmetic than functional. I wish that was really sharp. It's not. However, there is a thumb ramp here, and it's somewhat adequate if we grasp the knife tight to prevent a forward movement onto that blade. So hold this knife tight if you're going to do any type of attack with it. Definitely. Don't let it slip off. Axis lock, excellent. I've talked about that in other reviews, and it's just superb. Very tight, very easy to use. This is screw together construction on this 710, so it is you can take it apart. Very nicely done. If you dunk it in salt water, definitely do that. Drilled out on the stainless steel liners to maybe give it a little bit lighter weight. I like that as well. Ergonomics and balance overall are superb on this knife. Clip is excellent. Typical Benchmade excellence on the clip. Yes, I would want it mounted higher. At least they made it black, and it's a tough clip. In my experience, it's very hard to bend a Benchmade clip. Love it. Overall look and fit and finish of the Benchmade 710 McHenry Williams is outstanding. So, if your scenario you think needs a large folding tactical knife, maybe in lieu of a larger and heavier fixed blade knife, definitely consider the Benchmade 710. I bought mine from Newgram for about 106 bucks. That's a steal. Look into it. You will not be disappointed. There's a reason this is so popular. Thanks for tuning in.